Melachim I.20. Another action-packed parak. Here we finally put together many pieces of the Achav Eliyahu puzzle that we've been collecting into a potential broader picture. Ben-Hadad of Aram lays siege to Shomron, and Achav agrees to surrender and accept his authority and probably even taxation. This isn't enough for Ben-Hadad. He wants to absolutely humiliate Achav. His soldiers will go in and plunder everything and everyone. On the one hand, what can Achav do when he's totally outnumbered and completely dominated militarily? On the other, there's nothing here to accept. What is there to gain? He loses everything. This isn't normal behavior for a kingdom of that time. You're better off controlling and taxing than simply plundering and moving on. Unless either you have a message to send to the rest of the empire, not to rebel, and that's not the case here, or if it's personal. Aram had taken over the northern area of Israel from Baasha when Asa, the king of Yehuda, had encouraged them and even sent a bribe. This area is incredibly important, as we've noted, for a number of reasons. One of them is that it controls an important route towards the Phoenician coast. This is an incredibly important junction from a trade perspective. As you already know, the Phoenician coast with Sor and Sidon has a powerful economy based on lumber from the cedar trees and, of course, the expertise in seafaring. They're the crucial link in the region for overseas trade. They have two weaknesses, though. The first is that they don't have much with regards to their own agriculture and produce. And second, they also need inland routes so that the goods that they wish to trade can make it to and from their ports to the destinations locally and abroad. This means that despite their unique assets and opportunities, they must have treaties with those who can balance out their needs and challenges. This can be quite costly for them, but if they find a neighbor who can provide what they need, they can make a very worthwhile partnership. Aram, having taken over this route from Iyun towards the coast, should be the natural partner for just such an alliance. But Beit Omri swooped in and grabbed it from their talons. They can circumvent the area of Iyun and make their way through Emek Yisrael and onto the King's Highway in Transjordan. He even moves his capital from its current location, uniting the eastern and western Shvatim, to help defend this alliance with a more northernly focused capital in the city of Shomron. The alliance is settled with the marriage of Achav and Izebel, and along with the political and economic influence, the foreign influence and worship of Baal comes pouring in. The Navi sent is Eliyahu of the Gilad, the area that had been abandoned for this political greed. He recognizes the great harm that this influence will bring in, and he tries to protest it. Even the clearest message he could possibly try to give, a fire coming down from heaven on the very threshold he warns them to stop crossing, will be to no avail. Meanwhile, Hashem's punishment is sent directly through nature. His actions will set up a chain reaction that will lead to the destruction of his dynasty. Aram feels cheated. They thought it was all rightfully theirs. In a sense, kind of reminding us what Lavan the Arami said, and probably wanted to do on his own, if not for the warning he received the night before. Ben-Hadad of Aram lays siege to Shomron, intent on enacting his revenge. The gold and silver is mine. Your wife and children are mine. He doesn't just mean that they're to be subservient to him, as Achad originally understands. He means they're literally his, and he will be coming to take them. This should have been his treaty, his wealth, his political family, and Achav will pay for his family stealing from them. But the valleys of the Shomron are not fitting for Ben-Hadad's massive troops and chariot deployments, and his advantage turns into a disadvantage when he simply can't maneuver them properly. This, together with the additional tactics deployed by Achav, left Ben-Hadad scrambling in defeat despite his apparent advantage. Ben-Hadad, however, is not to be defeated, and he's determined not to fall for the same mistake. Aram attacks again, this time in the area of Afek. It's important to note, it seems that this is not the Afek we know and love on the Mediterranean coast, but a place in the Golan by Kibbutz Afik. It's likely named for the water springs that were in the area or the steep riverbeds on either side of the narrow pass. That narrow pass known as Ma'avar Afek. Kind of parallels, but and the situation kind of parallels as well, where we have the Plishtim gathering together against us. In this case, we have Aram gathering against us. The Afek Pass is named the same way, but due to its being a narrow pass that a branch of the Via Maris crossed as it made its way north through the area of the Golan. This attack serves two purposes. One, it's aiming to continue to the Gilad area and close the faucet on trade routes leading into Israel through the King's Valley. This, in essence, makes the treaty between the Phoenicians and Israel completely useless. If goods can't make their way into the Jezreel Valley from the east, trade will come to a screeching halt. The ports will be backed up with products from abroad, and now no new products for export will reach them either. Achav will have to attack to defend his alliance, but again, the odds are against him. And this time, it's in the relatively flat area of the Golan Heights where Aram can maximize the effectiveness of its masses of troops and chariots. But Achav outsmarts him again, stopping the invading army right by the narrow path between two riverbeds cutting deep into the Golan Plateau, creating a narrow pass which negates all of their advantages again. There are only so many soldiers who can attack at once from either side through a narrow pass. In addition, Achav could perhaps also maybe have used the standoff period to send troops around to open a surprise second front. This time, the enemy is really on the run with little chance of escape, especially Ben-Hadad himself. This is the opportunity to wipe out the Russia who caused so much trouble and fulfill the words of the Nevi'im who advised you and helped you to succeed so that you can sanctify Hashem's name. Instead, you show mercy to those who are cruel to you. As we've said, those who are merciful to the cruel will ultimately be cruel to the merciful. How often today do our enemies use the exact same ideas portrayed here? The leaders of Israel are merciful. Yes, you try to kill them numerous times, but just make empty promises and say it's over, and they'll forgive you and let you go so that you can wait a bit and attack them even more mercilessly another day. We treated arch-terrorists and then sent them free to prepare the next more extreme, cruel, and animalistic attacks, the worst since the Holocaust. We treated their families in our hospitals. Even when they were imprisoned by us, they could complete degrees of higher education and plan and run their terrorist activities right from prison. And they'd even planned the next campaign, knowing it was just a matter of time before we set them free on the altar of our greatest desire of being good in the eyes of a messed up, backwards world. Achav believes his empty promises to give back stolen lands, cities, and even open markets in Damascus. This enemy who tried to wipe him out and plunder his kingdom and kidnap his people, Achav calls him his brother and mercifully lets him go when he could have rightfully killed him on the spot. Where was that merciful nature when his real brother was executed for nothing more than wanting to work the land of his father in the very next perek? This ill-placed mercy was Achav again selling out his people for the dream of building up a more prosperous kingdom which would connect with Damascus and his trade routes. Ben-Hadad knew exactly what he had to say, and Achav fell right into the trap.